Welcome back to the Mega Man-like miniseries. Today we're going to go over ladder climbing. Now I have already done a video on the ladder climbing sample project that comes with Pixel Game Maker, but today we're going to make our own, and in my opinion it's a little easier to comprehend. And so with that said, let's get started. Real quickly, one fix for the slide mechanic: if you have a situation where you're going to be hit mid-slide, currently this is what happens. You get hit and you get knocked back and you start glitching. So we have to be able to differentiate when you're sliding versus not. Now there's a few ways that you can do that. First, we'll go to the logic here. We're going to go to the common action under our hit logic, the link in. So right now it's just if you get hit. Well, that's great, but we need to specify some conditions for when we're sliding. So you could do a object specified action, and then you could select the object self, and then you could select sliding, and then you could say when not doing this. So it would be and the object's not sliding. So hit by attack detection and the object's not sliding. So if we did this, this works, but let's see what happens. And this is just so that you know that this condition's there. But now, even when you're not underneath a tile sliding, you can still slide right through. So we want to be able to still be hit on a normal slide when you're not underneath these. So the actual check that we want is going to be the top of a tile wall detection check, which we use to see whether we can come out of the slide or not. And then the last thing that we need to check is the opposite value, so that when it is not touching the top of the wall detection, or the top of the wall detection is not touching the bottom of a tile wall detection, it gets really confusing there. So then we can slide through when we're going that way, but we can't slide through when we're going that way. And so that will solve or fix that situation. All right, so there's a lot to cover in this video, so we'll get started here in the Tiles tab. You can see that I have a 3-tile ladder, and these two are the same, but we need them. Basically, I'm going to assign their area detection, so I'm going to grab both of these. I'm going to say when they overlap and when the player, so we could get rid of the enemy. And then we're just going to say we're going to assign an area detection, and we're going to name it 2. All right, and these are going to be the ladder climbing area detection. Now, if you need any more info on area detection, you might want to see the last video where I go into it a lot more in depth. All right, so we want these to be 2, and these are going to represent that we're touching, at least overlapping, a tile ladder. Now, the reason why we needed 2 right here is because we want this one to actually have a topside wall detection. So this is going to be used as the top of our tile. And then Noob added a top of the ladder rungs here as one, and it's very handy in this situation because we can actually make this another area detection of 3, because we're going to need this. This is going to represent you're on a ladder that you can climb down from. There we go. All right, and so yeah, we need all of these. Now, if we didn't have a tile with the rungs like this, I would go and I would use an area detection right here. But since the reason I'm doing the area detections in here, unlike the last video, is because this is a very easy way to just get it out there, and then you don't have to put this tile and then one of these tiles underneath it or whatever. This makes pretty much sense when I go to the scene and I start to place, let's say, this one right here, this one right here. So then I'll need another one in between there, and then this one on top. That laid out all the area detection that I need, and I didn't have to add another blank tile just for area detection's sake. And while I'm here, I'm just going to get rid of these couple tiles right here, and we'll move our player more right here. And so now we can just real quick check that the top of the ladder keeps us up there, and which it does. And so now let's get into the actual ladder climbing. So we'll go to the Objects tab. And so once again, I need to think where I want to put this. Do I want it as a regular action node, or do I want it as a common action? And I actually want it as a common action because I want even hit to be able to go to the ladder climbing. That way, if you're hit, you can just real quickly grab the ladder. I don't care if it waits the 0.4 seconds or any of that. So we're going to put it in the common action. So this common action, I'm going to change to yellow here. By the way, I don't know if I've ever pointed this out, but this right here is an area that you can see all your links, and if you click on them, you can actually jump right to that action. And then over down here, you can actually search. So if I wanted to find the walk state, I can type walk and it'll show me everything that's associated with walk, whether it's the action or whether it's all the links that are in between there. And you can turn this off by clicking, I believe it's this one right here, and then it turns it off. So I'll just keep mine off for right now. We don't have a really big project yet. Okay, so let's go to our common actions and let's add another one. So the first thing that I want to think about is, what is this common action going to do? And it's simply going to snap onto ladder. And then it's going to go to an action that we are going to call the ladder climb idle. So climb idle is fine. I'm going to make sure that I color this one yellow. And then we're going to go to, we'll figure out this here in a minute, but we're going to first off dead end it because it's going to be a go to. So we're going to dead end. We don't want this to leave. And then we do need to make a link in. Now we're going to be adding more to this throughout the video, but just to start, we're going to say if the player is pressing, so pressed up, and if the area detection of the object self area detection is equal to 2, because that means that you're overlapping a tile, a ladder tile. So we'll hit OK. And the one thing that we do got to do is we need a new motion. So let's go to animations. And there is going to be a few of these that we need, but we're just going to walk through this little by little. So I'm going to grab the walk state and I'm going to just call this the climb. So this is going to be the normal climb. And we're going to, let's see here. I only need 2 frames. On this, I'll delete this one because I'll just flip it in the end. And we're going to want the ladder climbing frame 1. So if I zoom in here, you can see this a little better. Okay, and then this one is going to be the ladder climbing frame 2. Now it's interesting, you'll notice that I don't have an actual idle. This is actually like a finished climbing that we're going to get to later, but I don't have an actual idle. And you can see that this is a looping one. And I'm going to show you how we're going to handle not actively climbing versus actively climbing. It's going to be really nice. All right, and I'm going to up these frames to about 12. I'm going to hit play and see how that looks. Okay, that's satisfying at least. And then the only thing that I need to do is make sure that I'm changing the connection point based on the gun. So I'm going to come grab the change animation state or set 2, and then I'm going to move the connection point right there, and then the connection point stays right there. So now I'll come and duplicate this, give it the right direction, and then flip these. And so now I have both sides. So you can see that he's still climbing while shooting. It's going to be really nice. You're going to be able to climb, shoot, keep your charge, everything. And then right there. And then if you go to animation set 1, he climbs like this. Say we go to our boomerang. And then I'm not sure if it's added yet. Okay, it is. Cool. So you'll get the little hand motion right there as he's climbing, firing a boomerang. Okay, so this is all we need for now. We can go back to objects and we can just simply set this as the motion. We don't want to set it because we do want it to retain the direction that you were facing when you climbed. And now we can look more into the settings here. Now, before we actually add the runtime actions, there is one more check that we're going to need. And we're going to need to go to switches. We're going to need to create a new switch, and we're going to call this is climbing. And so this is going to represent when the player, or let's see here, default equals off. And this is going to represent when the player is climbing. All right. And so then back in our common action here, we're going to say that when a switch here is climbing is off. So it can only go to climb when you're not climbing. And that will make sense here in a little bit, because this go to action is going to be a little different than normal, we're going to want to lock it in this particular pattern. And so this is how we're going to do it, by saying we have to make sure that is climbing is off to even start the climb. All right, so that looks good. Now we can go to our action programs, grab our newly created climb here. And now we can create the action node that it's going to jump to, as well as get into the runtime action. But real quick, let's just test our logic here. And let's see if we can go up to a ladder, press up, and then we start to climb. So it is working. We can't do anything. Like, you can notice that we can still move horizontal and all that stuff. Probably can still jump too. Oh no, we can't jump because we're locked in this common action right now. We have no place to go. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to lock out the horizontal movement. So we're going to bring that to 0, and that's going to lock this out. Then we're also going to say not affected by gravity, because we don't want to be able to fall down while we're trying to move up and down the ladder. Now, even with not affected by gravity, it still will not allow us to vertical move. Let's just try this out. You can see that I still can't move up and down. So we need to go into the move jumping tab, and you can see that there's no keys associated with move up or down yet. So we're going to say when up is pressed and when down is pressed. And then there's a couple ways we can do this. We can see that the vertical movement is 1 right now. That would mean if we left this as 1, then we would have to go into all of these states and make sure that these are 0. Because if you press up during these states, it's going to be trying to move up, and then gravity is going to pull it back down. So it's going to be like jumping up real quickly and then going back down. So, or the other way is that you can just set a blanket of 0 on the vertical movement speed. And then when it comes to times where you need it, then you just say this is the current speed. You just change the variable. So that's how we'll do it in this one. And so since it's fresh in our minds right here, we will go to here. And the first thing we'll do is make sure that we change the vertical movement speed, and we'll set it equal to 1. Now this could be set with a variable in case you could have a faster ladder climb or something like that. But for right now, this works. So now if we were to play test, we can't go up when we're just normally like this, but if we go to the ladder, now we can all of a sudden start going up and down, cannot move left to right. And you can see that if I'm stopping, that I'm still moving. So let's keep fixing this here. All right, so let's add our go-to state, our climb idle here. So I'm going to simply copy the idle. I'm just going to bring it right here. I'm going to color it yellow so I know it's this, and I'm going to call it climb idle. Now we're going to take over motion because we set the motion in here, and since we don't have a idle animation for it, we're going to want to keep the motion going. So we're going to have this take over motion, which it kind of doesn't make sense for an idle. But here's how we're going to make it stop. We're going to go to the variables. We're going to find the animation frame variable, and we're going to set it equal to -1. Now, if you're not familiar with animation frame variable, you can go to the variable management and right here, and it says that assigning -1 will play the animation and assigning -2 will stop the animation. All right, so I actually got that backwards. So I need to go back here and make it equal to -2. We want to freeze the animation. So when it's an idle, we want to pause the frames wherever it's at. And actually, we want to do that. Let's see here. We could probably add it here. We'll see what happens. And then the last thing that we need is a go-to. So a execute object action of the object self, or if we want to see it, the player, and we'll go to climb idle. So we'll go like this. So this is going to be our go-to, boom, go to this. We're going to make sure that we have 0 on the horizontal speed and also not affected by gravity. So if we were to play this now, we should be in this state when we actually climb the ladder. All right, but now I'm paused. You can see that the animation frame variable worked. It paused my animation frame. So now we need to detect when we're moving and still continue moving. And so that's going to be as simple as grabbing this but then we're going to call this climb move. This is just going to be a normal node. And we're going to change this to -1. So it's going to unpause it. And the link to it is going to be pretty simple. It's going to be if up is pressed or if down is pressed. So we need an or here. And then the link back from climb move to idle is going to be if up is released and down is released. Here we go. All right, so before we can play test, we actually have not locked out this common action. So because we're going to, and we couldn't really see it with just the climb idle because we were pausing the animation frame anyway. When we go back to climb idle, it's actually looping back into here and then going back into climb idle because we never locked it out. Remember, that's why we created this link condition of if is climb is off. So what we need to do is in here, we need to add another switch that is going to be of the object self, and it's going to be the is climbing. We need to turn it on. So we are now climbing. It's going to be one of the first things we actually want to do. Let's turn that on, then we can execute. Then it's going to be letting us go between the animation frame paused and the animation frame play. So now if we play test here, we can climb up and you can see right now we don't have a way to exit. So you can see that though, when I stop, I'm stopping the animation. And then when I'm climbing, I'm actually doing the animation. You can also see that when I'm firing, I fire while I'm idle. And then I can also fire while I'm moving. So it's a pretty cool system. You can keep your charge and everything. You can look different directions. But this looks kind of silly with me walking up in the air. So let's actually finish the rest of this. So the first thing let's fix is, actually let's go back into here. The first thing let's fix is that when you go back down, let's make it to where you go back into your idle state. All right, so when you're going like this and hit a tile wall right here, you're back in your idle. All right, and for that, we're going to actually grab the idle, just a copy of it. And this is going to be a on ground, go to idle. I'm going to color this white. Whenever I execute object action from just like a normal action node, I color things white so that I know that something is executing or being executed to. Just color references kind of help me. And what we want is we want it to play the idle. We want it to not be able to move vertical anymore though. And we're going to want a few runtime actions here. And it's mostly going to be these ones. So I'm just going to copy these three, actually these four, because we're going to have to execute action. And I'll just paste them into here. And this is where we're going to kind of reset. So this is also on the ground. You could even say reset. So on the ground reset. Now we're going to turn is climbing off. And it's going to be one of the last things we do actually. We're going to adjust the vertical movement speed back to 0 because remember we change it in here to 1 so that you can actually climb. And then we're going to have the animation frame be playing. So we're going to do a -1. Now it might already be -1 because you might be hitting the ground from the moving state, but just in case we'll do it in here as the catch-all. And then the last thing we're going to do is instead of going to climb idle, we're just going to go to regular idle. And so the link there is going to be that we touched a ground wall detection. So it's actually going to be the same one that we have in our fall. So I'm just going to grab that link and shoot it right there. Might have to pull this down a little bit. And we also want it to be from the moving as well. So now this should bring us back to idle, and then we should be able to press up again and start to climb. So we're going to go and we're going to press up, and then we're going to be moving, and then we're going to press down, and now we're back to idle. And I can be running and hold up, and it will start me up as soon as I hit the ladder. Now, we will fix this later we will snap the player into the center of the ladder. You can see that this is one of those issues. But for right now, we can see that this works. As soon as he hits the area detection, he goes up, and then we can go down and go back to idle. All right. So matter of fact, let's go over the snapping into the center of the ladder now. Now, this is the equation that was introduced in the ladder sample project, and I have a video that goes over that. So if you are just needing a few specifics about what I'm doing here, you can go to that video and get the majority of what you need to know to make a ladder climbing system. This one just was really smooth for this Mega Man-like style where we're using change animation set. We want to keep shooting, holding our charge, but still be able to climb at the same time. It made it really nice. So we have a lot more to add in this action if we want to snap to the ladder. And so the first thing that we need is let's go to our scene here. We need to take the player when it's right here activating the ladder and snap it to the middle. So we need to know a couple things. First, where is the player in the world? So the first thing we need is a variable. This is going to be a local variable. And we're just going to call this the cached X coordinate of the player. And we'll just say default is 0, just so that I can remember. You can also click these don't keep on game save, and they'll always be 0 pretty much whenever you die or go to a new level. Maybe not go to a new level, but anyway, this could be one thing is if you're doing checkpoints at least. All right. And so now what we'll do is we need to get where the player is. So we're going to actually use that newly created cache variable, and we're going to make it equal to the object's X coordinate position. So we're taking the X coordinate, putting it into the cached. And this is going to be the first thing that we do actually. So then the next thing that we need to do is we need to now take that coordinate position and we need to find what actual tile it's in so that we can put it in the middle of that tile. So how we're going to do that is we're going to take the number of this X coordinate and we're going to take that cached X now, and we're going to divide it by the tile size. And in this particular project, the tile size is 16. So that's the value that we're going to divide it by. And that's going to be the next step that we do. Then, since we're just going to keep going, I'm going to copy paste. Then what we're going to do is we're going to mod it with this percentage sign. We're going to mod it. And what this is kind of doing is grabbing the absolute value, because when you're working with coordinates, you're working with you're working with small numbers. We want to get a whole number so we know what exact tile. All right, so we're going to do it by 10,000. And let me show you. I'm just going to click OK here. I'm going to move it up, and then I'm just going to show you on the scene exactly here. So right here is going to be the X coordinate that you're grabbing. All right, and you can see that what we want is we want to convert it into a grid coordinate. So you can see the X is really big compared to the grid. We're trying to get the grid so we know what tile you're actually at. So the 10,000 is actually how many of these X coordinate you actually have. So if you have a huge scene, basically the thing to note is that this number right here, this 10,000, is directly tied to how big your scene is. So if you have a scene that can go an X that is greater than 10,000, then you're going to want to add another 0. So which I think 10,000 is a pretty good catch-all. But just note, if you do have a scene that is width wider than 10,000 coordinates, and all you would have to do is scroll out and see how far that X can go. You can see that right here I'm at 1,200. So you would have to have basically maybe eight scene widths in order to have to up this number with another 0. So I hope that makes sense. It took me a little bit to actually figure out what it was actually talking about, but that's what it's talking about. Okay, so back to this equation. So once we have got the number based off this mod, then we can actually retimes it by the tile size. And so with what we just did, we found the actual tile it's in, and now we're going to actually get the correct coordinate, or sorry, not coordinate, the actual tile that it's on. And with that, we can then, let's go to here, we can then simply add a half of a tile. So in our case, it's going to be 8. And then at the very end, we're going to, I just copy pasted this one here. We're going to say that the x coordinate now equals the cached x. So we're just going to reverse that top check right there and say, now you actually are here. So this is actually what's going to snap us onto that ladder. And so if we see this, I can go about halfway right here, press up, and it snapped me to the center of that ladder. I can be pressing up, and it's going to snap me to the center of the ladder. Now you can see that the camera, it might look a little jarring, but if you add things like smooth camera and stuff like that, it's going to look a lot better. So, but just note that if you wanted a easy snap right there, you just need these few variables to get it done. That way you didn't have to use an object, you didn't have to use anything that where logic could break. All right, so now on to the next issue, and let me just show you what that is. So we have the snapping down, we have the up and down, we can go to the ground. But one issue is that when we get to the top area of the ladder where we should be able to get on top of it and start walking again, we actually just keep going. And matter of fact, we have to go all the way back down in order to actually register that we landed on that tile. So we need to make it to where when you go like this and you get up here, it's going to put you just like that. And then you can go about your business. And then last, we'll make it to where you can go down from here. All right, so for this, we're actually going to need another motion. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to grab, let's grab the jump. So I'm going to grab the jump, bring it down here, and I'm going to say that this is climb up finish, because this is going to be when we're done climbing up. And really simply, I'm going to go to here, and we're going to add this frame right here. And we're going to give it 8. This is going to be the time that we want it to wait. This is just one way of doing it. I wanted to do it this way, so I put the time in this animation frame, basically. Now we can keep all of our animation frames here. We also want to change the frame in here. And then the one thing that we want to do, and this can just be personal preference, is I'm going to actually delete the connection points while you're climbing. That way when you're doing this climb in, your charge and your bullets won't be active at the time. So for 8 frames, you're just going to have no control over bullets or anything. And then when you get back up, you'll have control again, because it just disables it. If you don't have a connection point, but yet you have a object associated to it, it's just going to disable it until that connection point comes back. So this is one way of disabling and enabling a connected object, which is kind of nice to know, actually. All right, so now back in the objects tab, we need another action. So I'm just going to copy the fall one here so that I don't have the jump that I can forget to, do. And we're going to change it to the climb up finish here. And we're going to do a few things. The one important thing that we need this action to do, and actually let me just name it real quick. So this is going to be the finish climb up. All right. And we need this action, this is very important. We need this action to actually take control away from the player. So we need to take the inputs away, change direction, or direction changing away, and we need to keep it not affected by gravity still. And then we don't want horizontal speed, but we do want a little faster vertical speed. Remember, it's set to 1, so this is going to be a 3 now. And then the last thing that we want to do is we want this to actually go up on its own, we want to control the up. So we're going to have it go up by 12 pixels here, because we just want it we just want it to get us on the other side of that tile wall, so that when we fall back down, we're idle again. And how we're gonna know if we're in this action here, I'll bring this down here again, move this in maybe a little bit, maybe make it a little, well, either way. Okay, hopefully you can see a little better. But how we're gonna do this is we're actually going to make a check, and we're going to check if the player is out of that area detection. So if the player's area detection is not equal to 2. And so we can copy this and paste it right here as well. It's going to do this finish climb up. It's going to move up forcefully. We're going to force it to move up. And then this is where that 8 frame in the animation comes into play, is then I can simply just say if motion plays to the end. So that way I can just let the animation do the timing, and I don't have to figure out the weights and stuff like that. And so now if we play test this and we play, we snap, and then when we get up here a ways, it's going to jump us up and throw us on the top. And you can see that it kind of jumped us up there. It looked pretty cool. Now, if you wanted to change that, you could go into animations and you could actually move the center. So this, the center X right here, you could actually move the center a little more up so that you didn't get that. Just, you would move it up to the point where you liked, or actually, sorry, it wouldn't be this one. It would be the climb, my bad. So you would move this up to the height that you liked it triggering. But for instance, I kind of like this little hop up there. So he just hops up there and then he runs. So I'm going to keep it like that. Now, here's what I was talking about, the bullet shooting. So if I'm shooting and then I hop up, you'll notice that for a second, I stop shooting because that connection point. Same with the charge. If I'm charging and I go up there, I lose the charge for a second, but I keep it again. Now, there actually is an issue that we need to fix. We will save that to the very end though, but I'll just show you it right here. When I walk up and when I do that little hop, if I let go of X, which I'll try to do this here. Nope, I didn't do it. Let's see here. Right there. I'm not holding any button right now and I'm still charging. So we do have to change the way that our input handles some stuff, but we'll have to, hopefully we'll have time at the end here. Actually, I guess let's fix that before we move on, because it's might not be as clear once we do some other things. Okay, so the reason that's happening is because when we're charging right here, when we're in the charge state, the out link here is when it's on release. So when I have press, or when I have released the X while I'm in this state. Well, the problem is that when it goes, the Mega Man's moving up and it loses the connection point, it's actually disabling this. So it actually never detected that you released X. So then when it re-enables, you now technically don't even have X down yet. And so I hope that makes sense. That's what we got to fix. And it's very simple. All we got to do is just change this to releasing. And it doesn't really affect the logic anyway. All it does is allow us to be able to have a little blip, and then if we let go of X, it's going to shoot it as soon as that blip's done. So that's all we got to do. And we got to do it on a few of these. So on this one, we're going to make sure that X is being pressed. This one can remain X on pressed because this is going to be after you fired. So if after you fired, even if it re-enables, it'll go here, or you can press it again. So this one doesn't matter. This one does matter. Any kind of release, we want it to be releasing. So that means that this one matters. And then to go into the charge state, we'll just leave this as pressed as well. So really, this was the big one, but this should fix that issue. If we play test again and I'm doing a charge, I'm going to let go as I blip up. Nope, I didn't do it. I'm not very good at this. You can see it's a very small window. Nope, that wasn't it either. There we go, right there. So I let go as he was jumping up there, and as soon as I got able to fire it again with the connection point, it fired it. Now, we don't need to do anything with the boomerang. This can just remain as is, an on press, because there's none of this other logic that could get stuck. It's basically going to fire it and then go back. So this can remain as is. All right, so back to the player. We got just a couple more things to do. One of them being is letting the player get out early, say pressing left or right or jumping off the ladder. So when I was playing Mega Man, I noticed that because you're going to be firing, it doesn't let you press the left or right to fall off, but it does allow you to jump off. And it only allows you to jump off if you're pressing a direction. So that's how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to take this jump here, copy paste it, and we're going to just need a little bit more room here. So I'm going to slide these over just a bit. Luckily, this is the last action we need for this setup, but making room for it is, I don't want to get too many boxes everywhere. All right, so we'll just put it right here. This looks good. Now, this is going to be an executor, and this is going to be a jump off, reset, go to fall, because we're just going to instantly go to fall when we're done with it. And we'll go like this. I'll just move this over. There we go. Okay, so the one thing I do want it to be a jump. I also want it to be a more controlled jump. I want it to be in the direction that you're headed. And gravity is going to be taken off because it's a jump. And we're going to make it a smaller jump. This is where you can just vary it depending on what you need. And then we're also going to take off vertical movement because we don't want the player to press up once you're in this state. So it is going to need the runtime actions that we did in the on ground test here with a little variation. First off, we're going to go to the fall state after this. We're also going to add a little wait until we do that. We're going to go to wait, and this is going to be basically the amount that you don't want the player to be in control. So for 0.2 seconds, the player can't redirect the direction. And so we're going to put that before we turn off the is climb. And that way it doesn't loop back on the idle for any reason or anything like that. This is going to be the last thing that we want to turn off basically. Then we'll jump to fall. So fall is going to be a white box now because we're executing there. And these are all correct. We want this to do this. But the one thing that we need to add here is we want to move towards display direction. And we want to do it about 32 pixels. Right? So it's going to move us basically 2 tiles out. And we want that to be the first thing that it does. Now we need some links to get there. And that is going to be a few links actually, or a few checks anyway. So the first one is A pressed, and is, let's just say, right being pressed. So and, or we're going to say is A pressed, so this would be an or, but if left is pressed. So this is how you can do a multiple setup. It kind of looks funky because we have a press in there twice, but this is how you get a proper and or statement. And it's going to be a press and right pressed, or a press and left pressed. So that's how we get that. It seems kind of redundant because, like I said, we have to have the A in there twice, but that is how it's going to work. So now we can add this link from the moving state here, and we can go try it out. So we're going to be climbing, we're going to press A, and nothing's going to happen because I'm not pressing a direction yet. And now I press, oh, I got hit there. So when I press a direction, press A, you can see that I press up. And it's just long enough to where I can still kind of redirect. So if I was up higher, we'd have to make a higher ladder, which let's just do that real quick. So we're going to go up here and we're just going to make a ladder. This one will just be like a never ending ladder. Right. So then if I was to play test this, you can see that, watch how long it takes till I can correct myself. So that's pretty good. So you jump off a little bit, and you might want the horizontal speed to be a little better. Oh, also notice that when you're jumping, you can climb onto the ladder. So that's really nice. That's from the common action there. All right. So anyway, playing around a little too much there. Let's keep going on. So our normal climbing looks really good. This is about all we really need for the normal climbing. Now, there is one more thing that we do need that we don't have yet, and that is when you get to the top, that's great. But how do I go back down and start to climb down again? So let's add that, and then that should be a wrap for ladder climbing. All right, so we're actually going to have to add another common action. It's going to have to be a specific one for when you want to climb down. If you remember in the tiles, we actually gave this top portion a different area detection. And we needed to do that so that we can not go to this one. We want to go to one that forces the player to go down first. And so just the easiest way I could think of doing it would be to just have this one just be a flat out different area detection, and it runs a different common action. So that's what we're going to do in this one. So we'll go to our common actions, and I'm going to actually copy this. Now, in order to copy and paste a common action, you have to grab the actual common action. You can't just grab this name area here. You have to click in this in-between spot, get it all green, copy and paste it, and then that's how you can properly copy it. So this is going to also be a snap onto ladder, but this is going to be a go to climb down start instead. And we're going to need to do a different motion here. But for the most part, everything is the same except for when we're going down, we also need to lock out any kind of player movement. We cannot allow the player to move at all. This is a very particular sensitive situation here. But all these checks right here are the same. And we also want this one to be just like this. We are going to change this one, but first we need the one to change it to first. We want to make sure it's locked out, which it is. Now, this one is going to be a couple different checks here. So the first one is going to be if it's equal to 3, because we're going to be checking if this is on one of the top areas, so those top rungs there. We still want climbing to be is off. That makes sense, so we still want that. But then we want one more, and what we want is to make sure that we're on a tile wall detection. And so that way, what this does is it just checks if we're grounded. Now, the reason why we didn't have to add one onto this one is because if you're on 2, you can just start climbing up right away. And if you go down, you're just going to go back to idle. So it doesn't matter. But this particular one, we want to be able to go through. So we need to make sure that this is an area detection of 3, while these are 2, right? So this one's 3. And then also we want to make sure that you're on the tile, because you don't want to be like jumping mid-air. Your center lands into this and then you start moving down. It's not gonna, there could be some issues with that. So we also want to make sure you're on the ground to actually go down. Hope that made sense. So now let's actually go and add that climb down. So this is going to be climb down start. So a climb up finish and a climb down start. That's all you need, I guess. And we're going to use the same frames here. The only difference is that we're going to remove the wall detection. So I'm going to delete the wall detection from there, and we're going to delete the wall detection from there. Now, this might sound familiar from that ladder sample too, and it's a very decent method for going up and down levels with a tile wall there. And so now that we have this one, we can simply go back and set the motion to be that climb down start. And now we can go into the action programs here. We can tidy this up a little bit and just probably just drag this over right here is fine. All right, so we are needing this to be a go-to. So I'm going to just copy paste this finished climb here and call it the climb down start, the go-to that we're doing here. Size it a bit, get that right there. And it's really nice because we actually want all of these settings. The only thing that we want is instead of going up 12 pixels, we actually want it to go down or 180 pixels. And so this is going to basically climb down. It's going to do a short blip without wall detection, which is going to let us go past the wall detection and get onto the ladder. So before we play test here, we need to change the climb idle, make sure that it goes to climb down start. We also need to make sure that the climb up finish is actually changed to the climb down start. So just one of those things from copy pasting. And now we should be able to test this out. We can go up here and then we can press down and you can see that it moves us down a good ways so that we can get past that tile wall detection. Now I'm frozen because it took away my input ability, but we need to finish the logic. And so what we need is we need the climb down start to be able to go to this climb idle move loop. But the issue is that since climb idle and climb move are both takeover motion, we need a way to transfer the motion because we don't want it to take over this motion. So simply all we got to do is I'm just going to create a action here called start climb anim. I'm going to get rid of that and we're going to select the climb. We're just the normal climb. Now the time for this climb down is associated with the frame again. So I'm just going to say if takes over motion. And we don't really need this runtime action because it's going to instantly go. We will keep all these settings. And we're just going to add a link here that is just going to be a change unconditionally. So all we're using this for is to start the climb animation from the climb down start logic, basically. And with all of this, we should be able to play that. So we go up, we get up, we go down, we shoot down, and then we are frozen there. So let's see what would happen. Oh, okay. So this is actually very, very important. So in the climb idle, we actually wanted to freeze the animation frame to start because you start in idle basically. But in this one, what happened is since this motion plays to the end, since we were actually freezing the animation frame, it was going to here and then it was just stopping because it wasn't playing through the frames. So this actually never rang true. So in the climb down, we actually do not want to, for the animation frame, we do not want that. And then we'll go to start climb animation and then that's when we'll freeze it. So now this should work as intended. So if we go up here, we go press down, we can now move around. We can go up and then down. It actually looks pretty good. Feels good too. The only thing that it needs, like I was saying, is there's a camera jitter, or not jitter, but it's just a quick snap. And so a smooth camera would look really nice with this. One thing I wanted to go over with common actions real quick is that we have some really good uses for these common actions here. But one issue that could come up is that you can see that the hit has a pause weapon that it turns on and then a pause weapon that it turns off, and there's a delay. So we could technically get hit and then before 0.4 seconds we could actually start to climb, and then that pause weapon would never get shut off. And the same with the on ladder here, we have a is climb right here and a vertical movement right here and even an animation frame right here. But what happens is if we get hit, we get pulled out of this before we could reset all of that. And so what we need to do is just kind of add and look out for these other common actions. And this is just one way of doing it. There's multiple different ways you probably could go about this. The way that I want to do it is if you are hit like this, and say that you start to climb the ladder instantly, well, then I want the pause weapon to be turned off. We'll just turn it off. It really doesn't matter, but I just want pause weapon to be turned off. I want to be able to shoot again. So I'm going to add it down here. I don't think it's as important right here because you'd have to be touching the tile wall, and in the hit, you kind of do a jump. So maybe though, it's a good fail safe. So we want the pause weapon to be right here. Now in the hit, we want to reset anything that could happen here. So we want to take these and we want to, first thing on its top list is we want to, let's do that. Resetting stuff is more important than movement. So I'm going to reset first. We definitely want to pause the weapon. We want to send it to process, but then after that, we want to reset the player to everything. And first off, let me skip these and show you the issue. So this means skip, so these won't get run. So the issue is this. I'm climbing the ladder and then I get hit. And now all of a sudden I can start to do that bounce thing that I was talking about because my vertical movement's not reset to 0. And I can't climb the ladder. And that's because that switch never got turned off. So now I flip these back on, I unskip them. And I get hit. Now I can climb the ladder again and I can do everything as normal. So you do got to make sure that if you are using these, common actions, go-tos, or however you do, that you are looking out for the other ones because you don't want them to get pulled in, or if they do get pulled in, you want them to reset the last one. And like I said, there's probably other ways to do this, but this is a pretty, for this simple Mega Man character, which there's not going to be much more added. If you really think about it, maybe a wall climb you would add or something like that. The rest is all done in the player gun. So this kind of a setup right here would be definitely manageable, just looking out for each other or looking out for all the various common actions like this. So yeah, this is basically the climbing logic. Long video. I know a lot of useful things in here, and hopefully this helps you out. And with that, we'll see you at the next video.